Fearing for his life, Isaac claims that Rebekah is his sister. Now listen to this. So Isaac dwelt in Gerar, and the men of the place asked about his wife, and he said, she's my sister. For he was afraid to say she is my wife, because he thought, lest the men of the place kill me for Rebekah, because she's beautiful to behold. Okay. So Isaac, he was there in Gerar. Isaac obeyed God's warning and stayed in the land, yet he lived among the people of Canaan. Maybe they had a bigger shopping mall or something like that. Life was easier for him there. And he was closer than he should have been to those people. And this brings problem. He said that she is my sister because he was afraid to say she's my wife. In other words, Isaac went from the high spiritual experience of receiving an explicit promise from the covenant of God, which was made to Abraham, to this sin of lying. The funny thing is, it's exactly the same as what his dad did previously. In the life of a believer, it's possible for an event of great spiritual promise and blessing to be followed by a sinful confidence in ourselves. Peter confessed Jesus as the Messiah, the Son of the living God, then served as Satan's spokesman in telling Jesus to avoid the cross. When God's people think they stand, they should take great care that they don't fall. Yeah, I think that's really good advice. It says here that he thought that the people of Gerar were going to kill him so they could have his wife because she was beautiful. Yeah. If you look at Genesis chapter 12 and verses 10 to 13 and Genesis chapter 20, Abraham did the same thing because Sarah obviously was a good-looking woman as well. Isaac's lie didn't even have the advantage of being a half-truth, which Abraham's was. Maybe he'd heard, oh, Dad did this, I could get away with using the same thing. Both Abraham and Isaac meant to deceive and did so because they didn't trust God to protect them. How often do we fall into exactly that same pattern? Isaac's fear of the men of this place was not unfounded. The Canaanite men of Gerar asked about his wife. And you can just start saying, why are they asking about my wife? She's mine. What's going on here? Isaac should have trusted God instead of trying to be clever. His fear of what men might do led him to trust God less. Isaac's lie might give some protection for a small period of time, assuming the men of Gerar were more willing to murder the husband of a woman they desired rather than the brother of a woman. I don't know why that makes too much difference, but obviously back then it might have. Yet his lie made Rebekah more vulnerable and in greater danger. Whatever gain he received for his own safety was at the cost of his own wife's security. This was a significant failure in the duty of a believing husband towards his wife. The Bible doesn't teach that we are bound by what we are sometimes known as generational curses. But it is often the case that sins of the fathers are found in the children. Maybe it's a learnt experience. This may be because those sins have been nurtured in the same environment and pattern by a previous generation. We need to be careful of that. Isaac is discovered as he shows affection to Rebekah. It says in verse 8, now it came to pass when he had been there a long time, Abimelech, the king of the Philistines, looked through a window and saw there was Isaac showing endearment to Rebekah, his wife. When he'd been there a long time, in other words, he'd been hanging around and became part of the scene. Isaac was there and Rebekah hadn't been taken away from him. This was one of the situations, I think, where we see that God protected Rebekah more than probably Isaac could have done. even as Isaac depended more on his ability to deceive than in God. There was Isaac, showing endearment to, that's a great term, isn't it? I'm not exactly sure what was going on, but endearment to Rebekah, his wife. And the king, this Abimelech guy, saw it. He made the logical conclusion, understanding the nature of their relationship. The endearment was understood to be appropriate for a wife, not for a sister. Yeah. The king works it out. In the old King James Version, it has an interesting translation here saying, Isaac was sporting with Rebekah. The mind boggles. I'll let you think about that and work out what it actually means. Verse 9 goes on to say, then Abimelech called Isaac and said, quite obviously she is your wife. So how could you say she is my sister? And Isaac said, because I said, lest I die on account of her. And Abimelech said, what is this you have done? One of the people might soon have lain with your wife, and you would have brought guilt on us. So Abimelech charged all his people, saying, who touches this man or his wife shall surely be put to death. Okay, and the king works it out. She's your wife. What Isaac thought could be hidden was obvious to others. This is often the case with sin among God's people. Sometimes it's noticed a lot earlier than it's thought to be. What is this you have done is a similar manner and rebuke that Pharaoh gave to Abraham back in Genesis 12, and also Abimelech's predecessor to Abraham, the ruler of Gerar, way back then says, well, he says the same thing. You've deceived me. What have you done? Then he says, whoever touches this man or his wife will be put to death. In other words, he puts protection over them. Is that what he would have done in the first place anyway? So Isaac didn't need to lie in the first place? Most probably. God protected Isaac and Rebekah even through a pagan king. That's incredible when you think about it, isn't it? He trusted the ability to be protecting. We need to trust God's capacity to protect us and show us the way forward in all that we do. What a great lesson for us today. Have a great day.